have you here today. Most of you have gotten to know. Miguel Silva is our Director of Tutoring back there, in case you all haven't met him, but I think many of you know Miguel as well. We are delighted to be able to offer this workshop in person, though we've had some beginner tutor training workshops. We did one of these on Zoom back in the early COVID days, so it's great to be able to kind of offer a more specialized workshop for you all. We are recording it, so I hope you feel comfortable with that, and that just gives more people the opportunity to hear from our wonderful experts, fellow tutors themselves, Sue and Leslie, and I will hand it right over to them. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Hi.
Glad you all could make it. I wanted to start by saying that this is a little bit long, actually, because I'm Leslie, and I did not actually develop this workshop. I was brought in a little bit later on, and it was really Sue here and Susan Weintraub, who developed it. And Susan Weintraub was, a fellow. Was a friend, a fellow tutor, and a board member who unfortunately passed away last year. And, our Tutor Resource Center is named after her. And so you can see her reach is really, really wide, actually, because she and I met when I first moved here, and it turned out, we had been speech pathologists. I was retired, raised my kids, and didn't work for a long, long time. And, but we had this sort of thing in common. And then she had suggested that at a point once, I was tutoring and things, that I join in, and then the three of us had been doing it for a short time. So I had nothing to do with how this is all put together, but I appreciate being here. And anyway, so we are both former speech pathologists, but I want to assure you all that first of all, we're not trying to make you into speech therapists, speech pathologists, or anything along those lines. And this is not really what we would call an accent reduction program either. So I believe accents are lovely and, and shouldn't be messed with too much. But our feeling is that if you can spend about 10 minutes per session working on pronunciation, it's one component of improving your students' ability to communicate in English. And it's a really important one, as you know. And also that you should know that your learner, may master these skills, some of these skills in the session, but, you may not feel that, you may not hear it being carried over in conversation. That's totally normal. And it's almost to be expected, and I think you may have, if you've been tutoring a while, you may have learned that even with working in sort of the grammar area or vocabulary, you think, oh, they can do this thing, and then the next time they come in, they're making that mistake in conversation. And it's totally normal. It's the same with pronunciation. You have to be patient, and you have to know that this is one of the tools of the toolbox that, you're giving them. And so that when they are in a situation and, and maybe they're not being understood, there might be a little thing in the back of their mind that, the light bulb will go off, so to speak, or they get the little ding, and they think, oh yeah, I was supposed to do this, and then they make that little adjustment, and then the person understands it. So, and so everything that you're doing is very, very, it's useful. Don't get discouraged. So, as with everything else that we're doing with them, do not get discouraged. So, I also want you to know that when you're working on pronunciation, it's not done in isolation, because you're also going to be working on vocabulary, you're going to be working on grammar, you're going to be working on maybe with writing. So it carries over to lots of different things. So don't think of it as being this thing that you're just going to work on pronunciation for 10 minutes. That's the only thing you're going to be doing. So think of that when you're planning it. I think it's a good idea to think of that in advance. So we just don't want you to be intimidated. We're going to kind of show you what they developed, this sort of step-by-step program that you can follow. And if you have any questions during this, don't hesitate to stop. Don't let it go too long if you're going to forget. And I think we're going to get going. All right. Nice to meet you all. That was a great introduction. And keep going. Okay. The first thing that we're going to do is talk about how sounds of speech are produced. And we're going to talk about voicing and unvoicing. And these are things that you're going to need to teach your students. I'm going to be talking about letters of the alphabet and also sounds that the letters make. So maybe you haven't thought about this in a long time, but the letter might be V, but the sound is not V. The sound is V. So there are two different things. So before we start, I'm going to give you a little exam. I'm going to say a sound, and I'm going to have you say it as well. Do you all have little mirrors?
We do have mirrors over here.
I'll get them. Oh. No, we have these mirrors, but the truth is you could use your phone. Oh, yeah, flip.
Put your phone on mirror.
On camera.
Selfie.
It's not like you were going to do a selfie, but I just thought, you don't need mirrors anymore. Well, the mirrors is a nice little mirror. Okay, so I'm going to say a sound, and I want you to say it after me, but I want you to look in the mirror while you say the sound, okay? The first is the letter B. The sound is B. Look in the mirror and say B. What are you using to make that sound? Lips. Okay, very good. So we say lips are an articulator because they're a part of the face of the mouth that helps you make a sound. The next sound is the letter L, and it's Look at them here and see if you can hold it. What are you using then? Tongue. Where is the tongue touching? The palate. Some people call that the roof of your mouth. The next sound is the letter is F, and the sound is, look in the mirror. What are you using for that? Teeth. Very good. And lip again. Again, just to interject here, there's vocabulary in here. So some of your students might not know the parts of the face, the words, so that's an important first step. And actually, someone mentioned palate, and maybe you would say roof of the mouth, and then you get into what is a roof. The roof is up. The letter N. What are you using there? Lips. You're using something else too. All right, here, try this. Hold your nose and say the sound of M. Here. So what are you using then? Your nose. Yes, your nose also is involved in speech sounds. So as Leslie said, after you do this with your student, you've talked about letters, you've talked about sounds, and also parts of the body. So on. Okay, so now we have under your belt some articulators. Okay. The sounds of English are produced in pairs. One pair is, most of them, I should say. One sound is voiced and one sound is unvoiced. What is that, you are saying? All right, I want you to make the sound of the S and sustain it. Well, wait a minute. First, put your hand right over here where your larynx is coming out. And sustain the sound of the S. And
Now sustain the sound of the Z sound. Those two sounds are made exactly the same in your mouth, but there's one difference. Can you feel the difference in your throat? First do the S, and now the Z. What do you feel? Vibrations. And what you're feeling is air going through your larynx. And that means it's a voiced sound. And you'll see this in some of the books, and sometimes you're going to have to teach your students the difference between a voiced sound and an unvoiced. So the articulators are exactly the same. The only thing different is the voice. Everybody kind of get that so far? Okay, so we're going to go through the sounds of the alphabet fast. And I want you to tell me which one is voiced and which one is not. We'll do it together. The first bunch of sounds, the articulators are the same for both. Just the voice is different. So you have to put your hand on your larynx, or sometimes people call this the voice box. All right, the first one is the P and B pair. So P is and B is B. Do you feel any more vibration? Which one? The B, right. So which is the voiced sound? B. And B. Okay, the next pair is F and B. So F is and B is sustain. Which one's voiced? B. B. Is everybody with me, sort of? Okay.
I have a question on the B. A question on the B, like B's from the back of your B versus P seems to be from the front.
The difference is P is an air-rated sound, so you're going to get some air coming out, but your articulators are the same.
Yeah. Feels deeper. But that's the vocal cords.
That's the vocal cords.
I think what you're feeling is the voice is your voice turning on. But your lips are the same. You're not
Also,
really.
yeah, remember when you're doing the voiceless not to add a vowel sound. So don't say P, because if you do that, vowels are all voiced.
Right,
so you're adding the voice to it. So it has to just be the P without the vowel after it. Right?
Okay, the next pair is the T and the D. So first is
Yeah.
the D is the voice.
Yeah.
And the next sounds are K and G.
Good.
Which one is the voice? G. You see there's a pattern here. I want you to try it anyway. The next two sounds are TH, and I don't know if you can see that there's like a line under this one. So that's a different sound. This is the TH that goes like in
Think.
This is the TH in the and them. So it's and which one is voiced there?
Maybe the second.
Yeah, definitely second. And do you understand when I'm saying the sounds, the difference in the two THs? Do you hear that?
Seen this, but never knew what that
And here's our friend that we already did before, so you know the answer. S is and Z is. The next two sounds are SH, and this is je. Z. So it's sh and je. Now you might wonder where in the world you're going to use je, but that would be in words like pleasure, treasure. But I don't think we have any English words that begin with je.
I don't think so.
French?
Yeah,
You could think joie.
French.
Joie. Right. The last pair is CH, and that's the symbol for J. So it's ch and J. So that would be like a J for judge, that sound. Ch and J. J. Do you feel the difference in those two sounds?
No.
Okay, try it out loud.
Your articulator should be in the exact same place. You shouldn't
Which
move
one
your
do
mouth,
you feel
move your mouth.
more
The
vibrating?
only difference is you're vibrating. You're putting voice to it.
Anybody guess? This is a hard one.
What?
You're right. The J sound, the J, is the voiced sound. Okay, here are the three sounds that you can't make if your nose is stuffed up. So if you put your hands on the side of your nose and you sustain a and a and this is NG like ing. Yeah. You should be able to feel that buzzing.
Just as a little side thing, this book that the office has, this pronunciation fun with pictures, kind of uses this idea in the exercises, and they're calling it minimal pair practice. So they're saying that you can work on these sounds together. So on this page, you're working on p and b together. They're made the same, the only difference being voice and voiceless. So you're teaching sort of how the sound is made, and it's the same, right? And then they're showing pictures. So pig, big. So it's just wanted you to point out that what we're doing here, we're calling it voiced and unvoiced, but it's also being called minimal pairs in this book. It's the same thing.
And you're wondering, like, why are we teaching this? Well, you might have to teach your student which articulators to use, and don't worry about it if you really don't think you know how to produce these pairs. It's in your booklet, how each sound is made, and also in the pronunciation pairs, it has a little thing, put your teeth here, or put your tongue here, so you're not going to have to figure it out yourself.
I just wanted to say that NG is particularly difficult for whether we say. Is that in here, the NG sound?
I haven't looked that closely.
Okay. Or maybe you could just give us a.
But we can
That
talk about
that is covered in pronunciation pairs. There's a lesson on NG.
There's
So
the
maybe
bigger book that's over there.
Okay.
that's also one of the booklets we use, and it will tell you where to produce, where to put your tongue in, and so on. Okay. I think this is the last group. These are called the windy sounds, and a W is wah. And if you put your hand in front of your face and go wah, you should feel some air come out. The next one is H. And the last one is hua, like what, and where, and who uses that? We don't know. But it's on the journal.
No, we have the L.
Oh, the lifters. Okay, these are not produced exactly the same way, but they both use the tongue. So I want you to first sustain an L, and now an R, Can you tell me the difference in the tongue, what you did with and How are they different, tongue-wise? What's your name?
Carol.
Carol got it.
Because she's an R and an L in her name.
That's right.
That's right.
That's it. That's it. I use them all the time. No.
But here's another question. When you make an L, what part of your tongue are you using? The tip. And when you make an R, what part of your tongue are you using? The middle? The sides.
I use the sides.
I use the sides.
You're not using the tip of your tongue.
No.
You're using the back of your tongue or the side, and that's what Carol was saying. There's a difference in the front and the back of your tongue. You might have to work on this if you have, say, a student from Vietnam. Now we have the vowels. And these are a little bit harder because you can't see them so much on your face. And I guess the three things that are most important are some vowels are made with a smile. So look at your little mirror and make the sound of E. That is the smile area. This gentleman thinks he's getting a kick out of it. Now I want you
So it's represented here by this, but it's
Yeah.
the sound of B.
E. The other group of sounds are open sounds. So if you go ah, look at your mouth in the mirror. Ah. Are you smiling? No. Your mouth is open. Ah. The other group are round sounds like ooh. So look at your mouth there in the mirror. Ooh. Can you see? All right, I'm going to do a little exercise with you. And we're going to go around the vowel circle. So this is called the vowel circle. It starts here, and then you go counterclockwise all around. And I'm not going to make you tell me what your jaw is doing because nobody ever wants to do that. So I'm going to tell you that your tongue and jaw are going to be going down all the way at the bottom and then up again. But we're going to try it all together. So you have to put your hand under your chin and repeat after me. I'm going to start here. E, I, A, Can you feel that your jaw open? Okay. Now you're down at the very bottom, and it's aw, and ah. Now you're going to go up, o, ooh, and oh. Wait, I screwed that up. Cut that now.
We'll get it on the editing.
Boo. And that brings it back all the way up. Now, when you're working with a student, sometimes it's really hard to get the vowels between E and I. And sometimes maybe you can exaggerate it and help them to hear it and see it that way. And certainly if you're contrasting like an E and an aw, they should be able to see in the mirror the difference. Okay, so we've just given you a crash course in all the sounds of the alphabet and the vowels.
Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, on that part of the sound of the... Okay, so the next thing, you ready to... Yes?
I'm thinking that the masks have really made this like Herculean mask.
You can't do this with
Is,
masks.
you know, if we're working in a library where masking is, I'm just saying, I'm just commenting. That's
Yeah.
just a
You
thought.
know,
I
I
know
don't know if
everybody's
you can
dealing with this
ever
too.
now and then,
Yeah.
I'm using a Zoom with my students, and I wonder if it's like maybe have a Zoom class now and then.
Yeah, well, we're able to find, you know, it's not always the same, but it really put a,
Yeah, I don't see how you can do this if you can
it
see.
has made a lot of certain sounds impossible to articulate.
You run outside and
Yeah.
Yes, that's a bit, people that have any kind of issues with hearing loss,
The struggle is real.
I have just one little comment. I've been just lately recording my Zoom class because a student requested it, and I used it with another student that didn't request it. It really improved. I don't know if she's going to listen. The first student does listen, and it really has made a big difference. The second student, I don't know if she would listen, but her reading, when the recording was on, she was so much slower and more careful in her pronunciation, because I think she felt like, she would be recording it and she would be listening, or I would be, and so it was
So
interesting.
maybe it's not a bad idea to use both things sometimes, or tape something for your
Yeah,
student
no,
and send.
we're working around it.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking back to, especially before the past
Oh.
few months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all like this all the time.
Okay.
Forget it.
So now you're ready for the next step, which is auditory discriminant, which is also called listening skills. And what research has found is that a person cannot produce a sound until they can hear it. And first you have to hear it in somebody else's speech before you hear it in your speech. So if you skip this part, you might not get very far. Because this will really help your student to know what sound you're trying to teach them and to be able to really identify it and hear it. And with auditory discrimination, just like everything else we're going to teach you, think about building blocks. You start with the smallest thing possible, the smallest element, and then you build onto it. So when you're talking about listening skills, what would be the smallest thing you would think that you could hear in a word? Do you think you should do the whole word?
First consonant.
First consonant? What's even smaller than the consonant?
I don't know, first letter.
Yes, the first sound. So you start just going with a sound. And what you're asking your student to do is you're going to give them a lot of different sounds, and you're there to tell you when they hear the sound that you're working on. So let's say you have a Spanish student, and maybe you're starting with the sound of the B. That's a pretty good sound to start with. So you're going to ask them to raise their hand every time you say the B sound. But if you say a different sound, like don't raise your hand. Only raise your hand when you hear the sound of V. Now we have in your worksheet, it's an auditory discrim in a workbook. This is an auditory discrim worksheet. You can make your own. But in this exercise, let's pretend you guys are the students and I'm the tutor. Okay, student, I'm going to have you today listen for the sound of V, which is And if you notice, when I make it, I put my teeth on my lip. You don't have to say anything, you only have to listen. So every time you hear the sound of V, raise your hand. If you hear another sound, don't. So is everybody ready? Excellent. What? The. Ooh. Okay, so you get the idea? And what you would be doing as the tutor is to, make a mark if they did it right. And then you can look at this and think, they've got it, they can hear it. Or they need more practice. Now, when you first do your first round, and you can tell them, watch my mouth, because that will help you if you see my teeth. But then when you do, if you think they've really got it, then the second time, do this. Now, I'm not going to do that for you because you're not going to hear it. You're too far away. But that would be your second trial. And if they've got it, that's great, and that's your first lesson. You do the articulator thing, you teach them the voicing of S and Z, so they know what that is. You do your descrim, the end. Don't do anything else. Send them home. And then when they come back, try this again. And if you feel like they've really got it, then you can start on production. But until you find that they really understand what sound that you're working on and that you can hear it, hold off in production. Unless there are some people that have auditory descrim issues, and a lot of times they have maybe a learning disability. And if you find that your student is just not understanding or getting this at all, you can just do a couple rounds where they just look at your mouth and see if they can tell when you're making the right posture. But it's not worth struggling over.
So we do have in here starting with just the sound, right? And you can move, and then you can move up. So can they hear it in a syllable? You know, like V, Lee, me, T, V. Raise your hand, and it kind of keeps going up from there. So this is how we get it harder and harder. This one is same. It says same versus different. So here's another listening exercise to see if they can get it. You say, I'm going to say two. Are they the same or are they different? V, that'd be the same. V, C, that'd be they're different. You know?
But you can just start with the sound and the
starting
syllable.
with the sound and the syllable and working up.
Once you feel they've got that, then you can start with production. But you can always warm up with one of these little exercises for 5 minutes. You know, whatever sound you're doing, just kind of a warm up before you start your pronunciation practice. So let's say that they have mastered, you feel like they know what the sound is and they can do this. So how do you think, at what element should you start your production practice? Should you start it at the word level? Should you start it at the syllable level or the sound level? You're right. Once again, you go back to the smallest building block you have. So let's say they're ready to produce a sound. Say, okay, you've been listening, this is great today, you're going to produce a sound. And we're working on the sound of B. And then you have them you'll be the students again, get out your mirrors. And I want you to say the sound after me. Look in the mirror and you tell me what you're using. And hopefully they'll tell you their teeth. And if not, you'll have to cue them in on that. Okay, I'm going to have you repeat the sound of B after me. You ready? You can do that 10 times, just so that they get the, if they can do that, which they probably can, then you're going to add some, what level would you go to next, do you think? Add a vowel. That's right. So you have your little, and I always model it for them at the beginning. They. Okay, you be the student. They. Now look in the mirror and say that, and check to make sure your teeth are on your lip. They. Okay. Though. You get this. Boo. B. And do this one wrong. So let's say usually they'll say a B sound instead of a V sound. So, by. Oh, that's a good try, but I think you didn't put your teeth on your lip. Look in the mirror. Try that again. By. this is your first lesson. And what you can do is, we used to say, have them write it on a 3x5 card, or keep a journal so that they can go home and do their homework. This will be their homework. But I'm thinking maybe they should just have a folder on their phone and write these things so they've got it, their homework on the phone.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to tell you, go home, and every time you brush your teeth, and you're looking in the mirror, I want you to practice these vowels. And I want you to look in the mirror and make sure your teeth are on your lip. So, you go home.
Is the toothbrush in
Yeah, just That's right. Brush your lip, and then you'll feel.
I was spinning on the mirrors.
But the mirror is important. And then, after they've done this, they'll come back and you're ready to start the word level. And like, where should you start? What words should you use? Well, in the olden days, you would have to like look up books and try to figure out, from lists. But now, you just ask the Google. Give me some words that begin with V that are common.
Sometimes I say like a 3-letter word. I'll put in there, what are 3-letter words that start with V?
Or maybe you
Or,
want
one
specific
syllable,
words,
yeah.
like your student works in a hospital. So you would say, give me some common V words used in medical settings or
Vein.
restaurant settings. Vein.
Vein.
So I guess we're ready to see where we are.
So it's about how to choose your
How to
words.
choose the words. Now you don't really have to look at the Google is great. And by the way, I used the chat bot. And I asked the chat bot, and it was not good. Because the chat bot did not, I said common words that begin with V, and gave me weird. Yeah, anyway, that's an aside. So how about if we break out and practice some of this stuff? I think we can give each of you some 3x5 cards.
They all have some 3x5 cards.
Okay. So
if you have a Spanish speaker, V is a very common word to start with, a letter to start with, because they often say B or V. So they may. Somebody used to tell the joke about.
that was my student who, when I asked her what pronunciation she wanted to work on, she said, I need to work on my vowels.
My vowels.
And I said, uh-oh. Name your consonants. We forgot an important thing, and this is knowing what sounds to start with. Pronunciation pairs, that we were telling you about before, have these printouts that tell you the most common errors in all different languages. So it's a really good place to start, and we encourage starting with consonants and not vowels because it's just easier to teach. And the first one they have is D.
Yeah. It's also V is very visual. So it's one that's easy to teach because it's in the front, as opposed to like say starting with maybe K, which you can't really see. So it's one that's often mistaken, and it's also right in the front, so it makes it the best one to start with.
And once you teach this, they'll understand the whole method when you go on to the next. And I usually do like a 6-week on a sound. I don't think they're going to get it all together, but 6 weeks, and then I go to the next sound and kind of circle around every 6 weeks a different sound.
And again, it's just, 10 minutes of your hour. You don't want to belabor it too much. You don't want to stress them out too much. Sometimes this can be kind of stressful, actually, for them because they can be frustrated by it. So you definitely don't want the frustration level to go up.
And I usually have my student write the word that I want to work on. For instance, if I have, if I show them this, we're going to work on, this is one of the words, I'll say, okay, look at the word, look at it really good because I'm going to have you write it on your card, write it, and I take it away and have them write it, so it's kind of like a little spelling thing as well, just in case. Okay, how about if we start out where you find a partner, and you can start out, one is the tutor and one is the student, and start out by doing just like 5 auditory scrim things, and then switch and do, sound production.
To make sure one point was brought up. Which was?
Just one?
Just one.
We hope we didn't mean to let you think that you have to work on every sound that's on this sheet that you get. You only work on the sounds that your individual students having trouble with, of course. And you can start with the D, and then just as you talk to them, you can tell by listening what sounds.
Yeah, pretty intuitively, I think, you know which sounds are giving them the most trouble. So did everybody have a chance to practice and get a little comfortable with the materials and questions, comments, specific questions about your student that you've been wondering what to do? You can bring those up now.
I have a question, and it's working with a person who's very comfortable in English, but she doesn't pronounce the final sound of a verb, so I don't know if she is in the process of finish or finished. And she knows the t, the d, and the ud. So when I give her a list, she's great. She can do it perfectly. It's almost a waste of our time to do that practice. But I can't get her to hear herself when she's speaking. So I really almost need to know how to.
I've been recording.
I wonder, like, how to bring this to her attention. And
Does
then
she understand that when you teach a verb and then you have the past tenses, another sound at the end of the word? She knows that.
I think she's got all the academic piece down. It's
Well,
just
maybe you should try an auditory scrim exercise with her to hear if she can hear the D sound.
start like you said today. Start with the listening.
Yeah, and see maybe there is something going on where she's not hearing.
I think it's
Then you can also,
well,
Because
when
it's
we
just
fun
at the
to
end.
I think it's just coming from Spanish.
Oh,
We
God,
can
yes,
kind of
it
lighten
is.
up at the end of a word.
can she repeat it after you if you say
There's another one.
walked? She can say walked.
That's very easy. It's just putting into practice really where it is important because I often misunderstand when we're working on a project. I help her with her word. So when we're working on something, I'm not sure if we finished something or if we're in the process of finishing it.
Well, you can also do just the word first, walked, and then maybe a phrase, I walked, and then build up, see where she loses it.
I guess it should always be in context for her because she's so advanced.
Right.
Is it because she plays so
I-
fast?
I don't think it's speed so much as she. Yeah.
I have a student, and I have a little concern about when I pronunciation some letters. In my case, for example, speech.
Yes.
Species.
Yes. Okay, that's all. It's a very common Spanish pronunciation to put an E before the S. So that's why when we were talking about the sounds, it's so important that you don't, that you use it in isolation.
Yeah.
So, not not
Exactly.
so it's just like when we were doing like V, we went V.
Yeah.
When you're teaching S, and you start with small. Si, sa, say, so, and I did it when I did it with my student. I elongated the S a little bit. So instead of doing C, I went C.
You know, I think that part
You have to
isn't
get it
so hard.
started.
It gets
Yeah,
very,
when you want the consonant after the SP or the ST especially, it's the consonant following the S, I think, that really makes it harder.
yeah, yes, very, very hard. Make a change in the mind because when I speak Spanish, for example, I use the E
Yes.
Yes.
before and
course.
other concept or other thing about the he talk about ED.
Yeah.
Because, for example, the one I wanted, and sometimes I pronounce it I want, or I liked, I worked. It's hard.
And you know, speech is a motor skill, just like playing the piano, and you have to practice. And that's hard for a lot of people.
Thanks, Glenn.
I mean, to Pam, to your point, my student, who's been, you know, I've had her for years, she gets he and she mixed up. And so she'll be telling me a story and she'll say she, but she's talking about her father. So I'm confused because I'm thinking it's a she. And it's not that, I mean, she's Spanish speaking, so they have he and she in Spanish. So I've been confused by that in why she's mixing that up, no matter how many times I've done things, exercises of with he and with she and with, you know, and the
In
different.
Spanish, the word le does both. It's
Oh.
masculine and feminine. Yo le dije. No sabemos si estamos hablando de una señora o un señor. So le, it is
But
in
at the
Spanish.
beginning, like when it's used as a subject?
That would be, well, no, as a subject,
No, so she's
But-
using it as a subject where she's saying he went to the store, he
Yeah.
did this, he said that, but she's, instead of using he, she's using she.
You know, but in Spanish you often omit that
Oh,
pronoun
oh.
because the verb tells you what your subject is.
Oh.
Just, I mean, just to kind of, I'm not, I don't have any answers, I just.
No, but
know.
I'm thinking that these are almost,
Yeah,
sometimes they just, it's a habitual thing that
Yeah.
they don't.
And I also wonder if, I mean, we're practicing specific things, but I also think that having 10 minutes at the end of your time to have conversation, because that's when the ending is going to come up, or the ED is going to be pronounced at the end of the word, or the ES, is that you'll have learned it and you'll have been able to say it right in the lesson, but then when you're having conversation, they tend to relax and slide into,
That's
Right,
right.
some focus on a particular skill,
yeah, you just go,
and that we find with everything.
yes.
So you're planting a seed, that's what we like to say.
That's a good
You're planting
thing
a
to say.
seed, you're giving them the information, and
It might have a long growing.
you're farmers.
But worth it.
Yes.
Thanks.
And when you use it,
That's
you own
interesting.
it. Once you use it, you own it.
Right, right. Do you have any recommendations, Rose?
No, I'm just listening, thinking.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the gender, soon it'll be they, everything anyway.
Right.
Like, coming up with a whole, I mean, the language is
Yeah, it's
it's
getting,
evolving under our feet.
yes, for sure.
So, don't worry about it, wait a
I
few years,
know,
it'll all be they.
that's just showing how old I'm getting.
Or ungendered,
I have to,
And how
unpronounceable
often
pronoun.
does your student get to speak English?
All day.
Oh, here there's another. All right.
That's what it is.
That's- I think
That's what,
I was thinking digitally, like, what if you, like, really conjugate it with her visually? Like, maybe for her to see it, to make that connection, like, just went back. I finish, I will finish, I have finished. I don't know, because you just,
Make
it's
it
just habit.
in red, or sometimes when you're working on things like this, you can have, this is very, elementary, have the student touch those parts of the syllable so that they can tell that it's longer, or slap it out, but it sounds like you've done all that and she can do it in that instance, it's the,
It's a conversation.
yeah.
can I bring up something specifically to my
Yes, of course.
situation? I appreciated what you said about accents and that they're nice. But there are certain things, even at this elementary level, that I don't pronounce perfectly American English either. You know, and I would say book, and you guys would say something else. I would say block, and you guys would say something else. Can you speak to that? How I deal with that with my learning?
Well, I have taught a lot of people Philadelphia accents, I can tell you that. I'm like, what do you think?
I'm not sure I know what you're asking.
Well, when
Well-
he teaches a sound, does he teach it the way?
Oh, because
Yeah.
because
Yeah, so
you're
I can-
teaching it in your
Right.
in your accent. I see what
My
you're saying.
accent, and I cannot change.
Of course not. Of course not. And I mean, I don't have a problem with it at all.
No, and I think
it's perfectly
you're
fine.
very intelligible, you know, it's
Yes.
one thing if you're
Yeah.
teaching.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
so I can hear certain issues, but I can not always perfectly mirror it back in what I would say is the right way, namely the American English way.
But also, if you teach one thing and then have a conversation and do something different, I think that will be more confusing. I would almost suggest that you teach the way you converse, because then that'll be the same thing. Because if you're going to teach block and you say it differently, it will be, I think it could be confusing when you have a regular conversation with
I've never
Yeah.
heard that.
I think it's gonna be understood, right? It's
Yeah,
gonna be
Yes.
I mean,
understood.
you are.
That's what's important.
You're perfectly understood. So,
Yeah, I have no questions about that.
And I'm not changing.
I don't think. I mean, I would need an exam, and I think mostly accents are mostly in the vowels, right? Because p is p.
Yeah.
You know, you can't really change
Yeah.
that. And
Well, for instance,
buck is
yeah,
buck.
look,
But
for instance,
accents are mostly in the vowels.
the sound in truck, that always
That's vowel.
is truck. So all my learners' sounds are sounds,
Yes.
and but my truck is not perfectly American either. So that's my issue. So I say no, it's not truck. It's truck. And then he goes out and he says truck the way I say it, and he's speaking English with a Mexican Dutch accent.
We've never had this question before.
Never. But I mean, it is a good question. But again, it's in the vowels, and so it's so close. I mean, all the Dutch people I met are just perfect English speakers. And I think if it's just a hair sounding different, nobody's going to know.
No, I think it's fine.
I didn't even know you were Dutch until just when you asked that question, so there you go.
Okay, anything else?
Any other questions? Comments? Problems?
Well, everybody stay safe in the storm.
Yeah.